everybody, this is David Kokesh here with Steve Kusaba in Salt Lake City, Utah. And as you probably saw from the description of this video, yes, this is the guy who just destroyed me in chess yesterday. And, you know, we put this together as part of the Taxation Theft Tour that we would invite people to play me at chess. And I didn't realize how badly I was going to get embarrassed in this, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's been really a nice surprise to see that we have a lot of people in our movement who are chess players, who are thinking strategically. Steve's definitely one of them. He even played basically with his eyes closed, facing away from the board, and with two of us teamed up against him, we barely beat him, and only because he made a critical mistake right at the end when we got him. But it's been awesome to meet him and so many other people out on the road. So without further ado, I turn this over to Steve because he's actually interviewing me for his channel. He's got a camera set up behind this one, recording for the real thing. So without further ado, yeah. Steve.
You understated how well you played that second game. you good carry your pieces, protected them, were going after things. You know, you were like inspired for that game.
I learned a little bit from you.
All right. You know, the one thing I wanted to start out with and get your opinion on is recently Jeff Sessions called for increased asset forfeiture.
In July, the department reinstituted the federal forfeiture and adoptive program, adoptive forfeiture. That is, I mean, I love that program. We had so much fun.
Which is
theft.
It is outright theft. But what gets me is not only the lack of public outrage over that they can be fleeced outright, criminally fleeced, but shouldn't the court systems have been able to protect Americans from that? How can the government come and steal someone's money, and then these people have to put up in excess of that money to get the money back? How can this even happen?
Well, you seem to be laboring under the illusion that the government exists to protect your rights, as opposed to that being a front, part of the scam, the racket to get you to accept its authority, and that government courts exist for justice, as opposed to perpetuating injustice and maintaining the current power structure. So would courts be able to deal with this, or should they? Yes, hypothetically, if you believe the false premise under which they were sold to us. But the reality is that everything about government is there to support the central racket of ripping people off. And I hear your frustration when you say, why wasn't there more of a response to this? Why wasn't there more outrage? And, you know, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. Well, yeah, most people aren't paying attention. That's okay. And if I may jump ahead a little bit here, because this is something that has developed recently in my activism and my understanding of freedom in the world, that 90% of the population is never going to think like us. Is never going to care about what we care about the way that we care about it. And that's okay.
I don't mess with politics. So.
That's probably a good thing. You know, like I used to do a 3-hour daily podcast, mostly about news and current events. And at some point I went, holy crap, I'm making a product that I don't want people to consume. You know, you shouldn't be watching the news for 3 hours a day. That's insane. That'll drive you nuts. That'll make you angry. That'll get you frustrated. That'll let you, that means that your attention is dictated by the people who are manipulating the media and current events through government. And so it was a major shift in my focus to go from views and likes and building an audience to trying to build a movement and focusing on my book, Freedom, getting it out for free, waking people up, shifting the paradigm. But also, you know, you want to fight issue by issue when you're an activist, when you're motivated by a deep-seated sense of injustice, because that's the injustice that's in front of you, the injustice of civil asset forfeiture, the injustice of the drug war, the injustice of taxation in general, the injustice of the welfare state, the injustice of actual war. You know, these are criminal enterprises that we're talking about here. But I don't want to play whack-a-mole anymore. I don't want to fight issue by issue or inch by inch while they take a mile behind our backs and laugh at us. I want to knock the legs out from underneath the table. And we do that by applying our principles in a way that makes everyone's life better immediately, localizing government, decentralizing it, getting it down to the community level right away. Hey, I'm getting ready to run for president in 2020 on the platform of dissolving the federal government. Who wants a 30% pay raise? Who wants your voice and your vote to matter in your community? So I'm sorry, I'm jumping way ahead there.
No, I like it. You're hitting right down where I'm going.
I can see your notes. I'm just reading the questions as I'm going, and just keep answering them.
Well, so that brings up two important connective issues, and one of them is you're going to be running for president. What are your plans for actually getting on major media TV shows so that your presence is spread out there? Because you do have a chance of really pulling this off, and so seriously, you'd want to get name recognition way out in front of everyone else.
Well, this is where I have a pretty big leg up. I've been on all the mainstream media television networks through my anti-war activism and civil disobedience stuff before then.
Now, maybe you have seen Adam Kokesh, the host of Adam versus the Man, broadcasting here on RT America. His show's at 7, just a little after the news.
New at 5 now, a new controversy over gun rights here in our region and across the country as well. A local gun rights advocate takes a bold stand after making a controversial video. Adam Kokesh.
And that's an important part about this. What we want to change is the relationship of the people to government and make sure that they understand that government works for us, not the other way around. And
several people have been forcibly arrested in Washington for dancing at the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. Among those held were RT America presenter Adam Kokesh. He joins us.
Welcome back to Adam versus the Man.
Corps retired senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research, Adam Kokesh, Iraq war veteran, YouTube star. There it is, Chris Kyle's text. This dude is straight up nuts. Littlefield responds, they're sitting next to each other. He's right beside me, watch my 6. Adam, does this help this guy's defense, or does the substances we've been discussing adulterate even the fact that they knew he was out of his mind that morning?
Well, I think when you go through the process of joining the military and going through all that, which is in and of itself an act of either cowardice, ignorance, greed, or insanity in and of itself, you understand the idea of moral agency and taking responsibility for your actions. So it really doesn't matter. He did it. He knows he did it. Whether it was right or wrong, he's a threat to society, and that needs to be addressed.
Leanne, there was a lot packed into what he just said. I wonder if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, no, I think he's right. I think this guy knew exactly what he was doing. I think
federal police now list demonstrators alongside terrorists, and sources say that Adam Kokesh may remain in federal custody until well after the 4th of July.
Adam Kokesh denies any connection to the drugs that federal officers say they found in his home, but he admits the shotgun he loaded on Freedom Plaza in D.C. on the 4th of July was the real deal.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jesse Ventura is a politician, actor, author, veteran who served 3 tours in Vietnam as a Navy SEAL. He's also a former professional wrestler, as you may know. But Jesse the Body Ventura, actually, I first came to be a fan through the movie Predator, in which he has an incredible role. He was more important than any of this, however, the 38th governor of Minnesota from 1999 to 2003. And he might make the case, or has made the case, that there's not a whole lot of difference between professional wrestling and politics. And it's
let me say this to you, Chico.
And right now, I've done 4 interviews today. This is my 5th. I mean, this was an awesome day for me because I'm going out. And again, it's like not about building my audience. It's about reaching other audiences and reaching out that way. But to answer the real challenge of your question there is, how are you going to get it out there? I have 2 answers to that. And one is that we're just better organized as a party and a movement than ever before. We are on the verge of being mainstream. And some would say that libertarianism already is mainstream. And I think because of all of the work of the people who have built the party that went before us, when we win the nomination in 2020, we are going to have an awesome platform to communicate these ideas and to present this platform to the American public. So I'm really not worried about that. Of all the challenges, I'm very confident that if we win the Libertarian Party nomination, everything looks like we're on track to do that, recruiting delegates like we are on this tour, getting people like you signed up and involved and engaged. We're not going to have a candidate like Gary Johnson.
And what is Aleppo? You're kidding. No.
Libertarians have long been waiting for a smart, respectable candidate to represent their values, and the wait continues.
All lot of my associates ask me, well, how did Bob Barr insert himself into that? How did that happen?
Of course, you served several terms under that Capitol dome in the Congress. And when you were in the Congress, you seemed to have a quite different agenda and record from what the Libertarian Party stands for right now. You were for very tough drug laws. You were for the Defense of Marriage Act. You voted for the war in Iraq. You voted for the Patriot Act. And I guess my question to you is, what was the moment of epiphany, and did you have a tough time convincing libertarians that this was a true conversion?
The real epiphany, and that's really a very good word.
Well, part of it is that winning the Libertarian Party nomination for president, and I don't know if this is the right way of saying it, but it's when I looked at the process closer than I ever had in 2016 and went to the convention and was an active supporter of John McAfee, it's embarrassingly easy to win the nomination. None of the campaigns had a properly organized delegate strategy, properly being a little subjective here, but the fact that there were empty slots at the beginning of the convention for delegates shows that none of them really ran a thorough, serious delegate campaign, which is what it takes and which is what I'm doing right now. What we did last year on the tour, we started this process, getting people signed up specifically for this. And on this year's tour, getting even better organized going into 2018. And with someone like Bob Barr, Gary Johnson, they're kind of able to game the system and bring in their people and win the nomination. And Gary barely did it in 2016, had 49.5% of the vote. But if I may make a larger point off of this, there are a lot of people like you, because you've been, I mean, I get to meet someone like Steve, and it's like, whoa, you've been holding the torch for decades. You know, people like me, I'm relatively new to this in the sense that I could say I hit the bottom of the rabbit hole politically 7 years ago in 2010 when I was running for Congress. For you, it was the 70s, right?
Well, I always liked the libertarian idea in high school. It just made sense.
So when you woke up, you were all alone, and it was really a different experience than waking up today. And I think there is, aside from the people that Gary Johnson and Bob Barr bring in, they do have a genuine support base within the LP activism community of people who are afraid of this message. They're afraid because they grew up in a time when they were the only ones around, and they think that if we compromise and we put out a candidate who's socially liberal and fiscally conservative, then, we've got the best of both worlds. And the American people go, the best of both really shitty worlds of mainstream politics, why the hell would we want that? That's crazy. And so there, again, two things in the shift in focus is leading with principle. We are the party of principle. We are the only ones who have an ethics-based platform. Like being a libertarian is not a political ideology; it's a recognition of ethics. That's all it is. Like, yes, you're a libertarian. You recognize that human beings own themselves. That we shouldn't use force and violence against each other. That we should respect each other's rights. I mean, most people would call this being a decent human being. And when we go into politics, we have to say that's libertarian to differentiate ourselves from all the people who, frankly, aren't decent human beings in the old parties. So one, that leading with principle, I think, is the major shift. Being unafraid to say, yes, this is why we are here. It's out of principle. It's for love. It's because we want to help you. It's not because we want to be right about everything or impose our vision, but we have to live that. And to me, that means presenting the policy of decentralization.
A lot of people, common, ordinary folks that have heard the mainstream message have a fear of libertarian ideas that all of a sudden we're going to be booting out people on the street, the old are going to starve, and the weak are getting it trampled on, and there's going to be no roads. And so what would a system look like? Localization, how would it operate?
Well, before I get to answer that, if I may, in your question, obviously there's some false premises there and misunderstandings of the message. Libertarianism doesn't say how society should be organized in a proactive sense, that we should have institutions to do this, that, or the other, only that they should all be nonviolent, that none of these institutions should be forced on people or violate basic standards of ethics. So when you say, how will we do X without government? How will we do Y without government? What you're really asking is, how can we do this without violence? And the answer is always a heck of a lot better than with violence, a heck of a lot better than with these coercive systems and forcing people in. So to answer your question then, before I even get to that ideal state as I would present as the immediate leap that humanity is about to take, the process of getting there is localization. Taking governments apart from the top down, localizing government down to the community level. So in the United States, again, because most people don't care and never will, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to say, we want to make it as easy as possible for you. All you have to do is come out and vote. You don't have to read any books. You don't have to understand anything else. Just, will you vote for decentralization of government? Will you vote to localize government? Once at the federal level and again at the state level. And at that point, we get government down to the county level. And I think that's where we've done most of our job really as libertarians, because at that point, government is localized enough that you have real competing authorities, you have competing municipalities, city-states, or what have you. And eventually, you're going to see counties shrink so that we don't have this enclosure that I would be able to, like on my land where I have 10 acres in Arizona, that I would be able to secede and be truly independent. So I like to say, because this line worked really well for Obama, if you like your government, you can keep it. If you like your healthcare, right? So if you're a liberal or a conservative and you live in a liberal or conservative area and I can't convince you to be free, at least I can convince you that you're going to be better off when governed locally rather than by someone in some far off capital. So when we get it down to that county level, I think what we're going to see first is a consolidation of law enforcement. I mean, the world is going to be so much more peaceful without the drug war, most crime goes away. And when you basically double everybody's income, when you get government, the leech off of everybody's back, it frees up so many resources to meet people's needs for safety, for security. So I think law enforcement is what might sort of consolidate at the county level under the county sheriff's office, and at that point be able to transfer to a voluntary system or a subscription-based system or a charity-based system where contributions are voluntary and people contribute at fundraisers because they want to support safety in their community. At the same time, with all the extra resources freed up, you're going to see a lot of decentralized functions of government take place on the blockchain, on the internet, in a totally digitized way.
And I simply remove the telephone jack and plug it into this box here, the modem. I then take another wire from the modem and plug it in where the telephone was. I can then switch on the modem. It's now telling me to phone up the main press cell computer.
So it's a very simple connection to make.
Extremely simple. I'm now waiting for the computer to answer me. And
things are starting to happen.
Things are starting to happen.
We still, just by the fact that we have the internet, we have this capability, government is a dinosaur. It is really obsolete because it takes on so many functions that are not geographically based and pretends like they are. So when we get government localized, the only things that it will be doing are the things that are really critical at the geographic level of that area. For example, licensing, right? We all want our doctors to be licensed. We all want them to be accredited, maybe not government licensed. We want something better than that, right? But do we need that to be geographically based? Like even right now, why do we have the United States federal government managing licensing just in this area where we should have a global standard? And I'm not a globalist. I'm talking about the free market. You get the government out of the way. Have a decentralized system of certifying doctors that's not based on, can you prescribe pills to keep the government sponsors and the pharmaceutical industry happy, but can you really meet human needs? Can you really serve people? And at the same time, you're going to have the creation of new societies and new city-states and new communities. And how exciting is it to think that when we get government out of this land monopoly, right? When we free up new territories to be populated, to be founded as new communities, to separate from those county governments perhaps, to secede or to break off as private property enterprises, as private property developments, or as new experimental communities or cities or whatever you would want to call those things. Those new developments mean that we can create communities and systems of governance and people coming together in ways that meet their needs. So we're going to see all sorts of really cool new stuff come about, stuff that we can't even imagine. And ultimately, the answer to, well, what about this? Well, what about this without government is, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't pretend to know the future, but I do know as much as possible, because it's practically a law of science, that human relationships are better without violence and without coercion. We are happier, we are more productive, we are more harmonious, and that's what we're working towards.
Well, speaking of a more paper-esque form of violence, the dollar lost 75% of its value since the year 2000. What is a pathway toward people being unencumbered from this currency and being able to use competing currencies, whatever they decide holds value?
Now, just to give you a sense of the history and the implication of the Federal Reserve, from 1800, what you could buy for $1 in 1800 would cost you 58 cents in 1913. This is a natural system in a relatively natural economy where it encourages savings and productions. These were very things that contributed to America's economic strength at the time. In 1913, with the passage of the Federal Reserve Act and the institution of the Federal Reserve System, we got away from that, and the Federal Reserve was promised to stabilize the value of the dollar.
How does it do that? I mean,
well, it doesn't. This is the thing. It's done the opposite. It has taken the value of a dollar and lost 95% of it. What you could buy for $1 in 1913 will cost you $20 today. We assume that inflation now, it's because it's become something that we've all known for our entire lifetimes under a fiat currency system as a given, and it's not. We don't have to have a system that's like this. In fact, our Constitution specifically gives Congress the power to create money and coin money out of gold and silver, have it backed by honest commodities, and therefore not subject to the whims of people that can now create money out of thin air.
Well, the obvious answer is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I mean, hey, we've got the technology, it's already out there, it's at, $150 maybe roughly billion market cap. It's already displaced a significant chunk of the fiat currency racket. I only see that trend continuing.
The world is in financial disarray. Currencies failing, economies in wild flux, jobs being lost. But what if you could build an entirely new economy, one specifically designed for the digital realm? Well, that is the dream behind Bitcoin.
Because some people have said, hey, Bitcoin is the answer to those problems. Are you a believer?
Well, Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place. And, of course, for large transactions, currency can get pretty inconvenient.
And what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a currency on the internet.
I sent 100 euros worth of Bitcoin from here in Tokyo directly to you guys through this camera, through the network, through the TV, right into your home. If I had tried to do that, send you the money with a traditional bank, it would have taken several days and probably cost 30 euros. I just did it right now with Bitcoin instantly, basically for free, and didn't have to ask anybody for permission. I didn't need a bank, I didn't need a government, I didn't need anybody. I just needed myself and you and our smartphones to do it. That's the power of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is fundamentally different because in Bitcoin, you don't owe anyone anything and no one owes you anything. It is not a system based on that. It is a system based on ownership. And no one can censor it, no one can seize it, no one can freeze it.
And, I'm one of these people who's not a Bitcoin above all else, because I can't say that it's going to be this coin with the first to market advantage. There are people I've interviewed who say, yeah, it is. And I'm not an expert, but I am definitely a fan and have absolute confidence in the concept of cryptocurrency, of digital decentralized money that is going to be far superior to anything the government can possibly provide. And already right now, I do as much of my business in Bitcoin and barter and cryptocurrencies as possible. So I'm not using the dollar. I'm not paying that inflation tax. And I know it's not possible to completely, opt out and really have no support for the system that way. But I'm very confident that this is the future and that people are shifting to this. So what we have to do to take away the false advantage that the Federal Reserve System has is remove its government backing. And some people say, Adam, this is awesome. You're going to end the Fed. You're going to end the Federal Reserve. It's like, no. I'm going to end the federal government. What do we do with the Federal Reserve? How fast should the dollar be displaced? Should it be phased out? It's a really easy answer. Let the market decide. It's not for a central planner to figure out. If I take office and take not office, take this receivership status of the federal government, and the U.S. dollar is still a viable currency, who am I to just pull the rug out from underneath people and create that economic upheaval? Well, all we want to do is say we spin it off and let it die a natural death at whatever pace nature dictates.
Well,
the sooner the better.
Right. Well, it's working on it.
And it may happen before we win on this platform. And this is another really exciting possibility, because the question kind of answers itself if you think, well, if an overwhelming majority of the United States population were willing to, raise their hand and say, yeah, I will vote to dissolve the federal government, how many of them are already, at least at the place where I'm at, of minimizing my engagement with the U.S. dollar? And if it was just 10%, 20% that were checked out the way and again, I'm not an expert here, and because I know there's a lot of subjectivity in this anyway. I don't care to be able to get into the calculations of this, but there is a critical mass that we hit, at which point the dollar really, goes over the edge, and the inflation accelerates in a way the government cannot control. And that's an exciting possibility. And if that happens before we win on this platform, we're really going to be going in, picking up the pieces and cleaning up the mess.
Well, there is really a sort of interest rate apartheid where the government, this is the people's money supposedly, and the government is lending money out to the banks at near 0%, then the banks are lending it out at more usurious rates to everyone else. And it's just sort of, they're just giving the banks money. After the Lehman crisis and everything was a complete mess, rather than bail out Main Street, they just made the rich richer.
And you want to get frustrated again. Mm-hmm. I know, it's so tempting. You just want to, but no, it's tough. It really, I shouldn't say that. It's easier. It's a lot easier. My life is a lot easier than it used to be, because I have given up these delusions about my activism. Because, I don't think that we want to fight issue by issue anymore. You fight issue by issue, even if you win, you lose. Because things will keep progressing, government will keep getting bigger, and I think it's, like I said, we want to knock the legs out from underneath the table.
See, you're trying to sort of, you're staying in the same place, but you're sort of breaking away, just pulling away from the system.
Well, I think that has long been put forth as a viable strategy to end the state, and I think at this point I can come to the conclusion that I really disagree. I don't think opting out, I don't think going galt is going to end the state, and there are a couple of reasons I can say this, that strategically I think we can eliminate this as a way forward. One is, you look at the first American presidential election, and at that point, you know how many people voted? What percentage of the population? It was less than 2%. We're talking white landowning males primarily at this point, right? And they didn't go, oh shoot, we only have 2% of the population supporting us. I guess we can't be the government. Aw, shucks. No, they said, screw y'all, we're in charge anyway. And if you have your little island, you have your little enclave, you have your little homestead or your seastead or whatever the case may be, that's awesome. And I encourage that. I think people should live as free as they can in an unfree world. But we are only as free as the least free among us. And if all the smart, freedom-loving people leave the United States, they're still going to have the printing presses. They're still going to have the guns and the tanks and the bombs and the planes. And you're not safe the minute you become a threat. In fact, you're less safe in this scenario because now that government has a lot less check on its power from the people. They're not as accountable. They're going to be able to bomb you in the dark and disappear you, and no one's going to care. So it really is incumbent upon us, and a lot of people have asked me about leaving the United States. I don't want to do it. I mean, for me, it's not just that I'm giving up on the opportunities that I have here, but that this is the seat of the empire. If you want to overthrow the greatest empire the world has ever known, you have to be here for that. So, it's tempting to want to leave. It's tempting to want to check out and go galt, but it's a losing strategy. What we really have to do is figure out a way, and I believe I have, and I'm exploring this possibility now, to withdraw the critical mass of public consent from government. And I think if we don't do that, government will continue and no one will be safe.
Well, after this election with Gary Johnson, the libertarian numbers have increased, and hopefully we're looking forward to an even bigger increase under your tutelage. And
that's definitely not an appropriate word for it, tutelage. I'm a messenger, and when I wrote my book, with all the great libertarian manifestos and all these great books in my jail cell, I decided to become the greatest rip-off artist the freedom movement has ever known. And I don't claim credit for any of these ideas or an originality in any of them. I think it's really important that we maintain that kind of intellectual humility. And I know that even as important as what I'm doing and what we are doing as a team and as a campaign right now is for the course of human progress, there are other dimensions of human existence that are just as important, or perhaps even more so. And it's frustrating when you think as an activist this is the most important thing and people are dying and suffering, and if we don't do something about it, it's going to continue forever. But people are curing cancer and working on mental health issues. Those are really essentially, or the new technologies. I mean, working on new ways of implementing the internet, or new cryptocurrencies, or communications platforms. All of these other things contribute to this great dance forward of humanity. And the political one is really just one dimension of this. I think remembering that for all of us is really critical to staying humble, and that, like I said, there are a lot of other people doing just as important things, and maybe they don't want to help, maybe they don't care, maybe they won't see it this way, and then that's all right.
Well, I hope you get the message out. Thank you very much.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, to be a central banker, wrecking life to the ends of the earth. How many crises I create will be the measure of my total worth. The banks all need some extra cash. I print the money as I dash to help the Congress waste that money. Fool the public, ain't it funny? Oh, to be a central banker, wrecking life to the ends of the earth. How many crises I create will be the measure of my total worth. The high food prices with high taxes burn the workers and the poor. Yet I can lie about inflation, babbling on about the core. So all to be a central banker, wrecking life to the ends of the earth. How many crises I create will be the measure of my total worth. All to be a central banker. They chose me to be a central banker. was younger, art for me was shoplifting. Then I grew wiser, switching to politics. Where could I go to learn such great tricks? Prepare to be a banker. To be a bureaucrat. With each move to better work, I'm raising myself higher each day, king of the world. And now I've reached the top. Oh, to be a central banker. They chose me to be a central banker. When I was younger, art for me was shoplifting. Then I grew wiser, switching into politics. Where could I go to learn such great tricks? Prepare to
The press is this may be the biggest headline of all. Pro-gun activist Adam Kokesh says someday he's going to run as an independent for the presidency, and his platform is going to be a simple one: abolish the federal government.